if you didn't know, only 4% of businesses ever in the US ever break $1 million in annual revenue. And less than 1% ever break through 10 million. And that's not my estimation. That is coming from the US Census Bureau. Looking at businesses across the nation, 4% hit 1 million, only 1%, and actually less than 1% ever break 10 million. And it's not because the market is broken. It's not because of the economy, because there are businesses that thrive in the economy. They thrived in 2008, they thrived through COVID. It's not because they don't want it badly enough, because if you have a business, it's because you want to create freedom, you want to create wealth, and it's not because they're not smart enough or they don't have the education and background. Especially, we love working with businesses in the trades, home services, HVAC, plumbing, and these are amazing people. We are those people who go out and do great work, but the reason that they get stuck, most don't break through 1 million, very few ever break through 10 million, is because they're solving the wrong problems and they're using the wrong strategy to solve those problems. So, in this call, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on the eight, really the silent business killers that keep companies that are great, keep them stuck. And what the shifts are that separate the 1% who scale to 10, 20, 30, 40 million, and what separates them from the rest. So there are eight key constraints that every business has to overcome in order to first break through 1 million. That's the first milestone, and then break through that $10 million mark. And I got the team on here. So if you don't know me, I'm AJ Adams, CEO of All True Partners, and for the last 10 years, we've all been in the space of working with businesses, consulting, building systems, processes, infrastructure, scaling businesses. And the last 3-4 years alone, we've trained over 4,000 CEOs, business owners, entrepreneurs in how to scale, and we've consulted over 100, and we've helped dozens hit that 1 million, hit that 10 million, and scale beyond that. Right now, our largest client is an HVAC company that did 30 million in revenue last year, and they're now pushing for 40 and 50 million in 2025. So we're going to break down real tactical. This is not going to be mindset stuff. This is going to be actionable, so you can leave this call and know what are the eight constraints in your business that you need to address and how do you fix them. What problems do they cause? What problems do they cause, and what are the solutions? So we're gonna kick off here, but I want to introduce the team real quick. Three of the four that are on here. Heather's not with us on this call today. She's in doing her operations thing. So I want to bring on Kirk and have Kirk introduce himself, and then we'll bring on Tim, and then we'll jump into these eight constraints so you know what you can do when you leave this call.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, Kirk Jewell. Strategic HR. Been doing strategic HR for more than a decade now, and really growing teams and growing businesses through human capital assets. So really helping business owners and really businesses in general, big and small. I got my start with a multi-billion dollar company, and then realize that there is a need in the small business space to take that knowledge downstream into small business. So, and I deem small business anybody under 125 million. So there's a big need for what we do on the strategic HR side, but really aligning your people, your processes with your financial goals. And with that, I'll throw it over to Tim.
Tim Eaton, I'm the CFO for Ultra, really just the head of finance. A lot of what I do is help clients with strategy. I got my start with my own business, and my motto as of now is I am the advisor I wish I had when I was my own operator working under my own roof. And I say that because a lot of times the finance realm is where most entrepreneurs or most operators, when they're small, it's where they struggle with most. They don't understand the numbers. They don't understand why the numbers are important, what the numbers mean, and what they tell you. And so after my first business failed, I'd taken some really bad advice. I jumped in and I was like, I'm going to learn accounting and finance so that the mistakes that I made and the advice that I listened to, I would not listen to that again. And I'd make sure that if I ever stepped into a consulting realm or if I took another job or started another business, I would understand the mistakes and the issues that I learned from. Again, you learn from your failures best. Oftentimes, the best operators learn from other people's failures. And so that's how I got my start. In the last 10 years, I've consulted over 150 businesses and actually scaled and exited a few of them. It's been a really fun and entertaining time. Back to you, AJ.
Awesome. And let me add a few accolades that these guys are too humble to admit because they're very good at what they do. Tim is definitely the advisor that has really helped me and continues to help me as a CEO become I'm not bragging on myself, but I'm proud to be consistently growing to become a phenomenal operator, and that is what I aspire to. Kirk has literally written HR processes and systems, interviewing that have helped companies scale to hundreds of employees from just a handful. So collectively as a team, and then Heather has built systems and accounting teams for hundreds of billions of dollars companies, global, that have done in the construction home services space. So collectively, we've helped generate, I would say conservatively, over $100 million in revenue for businesses that we've worked with. And we say all that because when in the space of business consulting, and this is part of the reason why only 4% ever hit a million and only 1% ever break 10 million, there's a lot of bad advice from people who haven't done the thing that they say they can help you do. We have done these things over and over again, and our expertise is in building infrastructure to help businesses scale. We are business owners. Our first business was not just in helping businesses. We've worked in corporate America. We've worked in our own businesses. We've worked side by side in the trenches with business owners. You'll hear about some of them as we go through to really help you anchor the principles we're going to teach. So all that aside, let's dive into these constraints. So the first constraint is really simple, and I'd love for Tim to weigh in on this, and feel free to just jump in. But the first constraint is one of the reasons why businesses either don't break a million or they get stuck around 3 to 5. Things are going well, and suddenly it all falls apart. And it's like pouring concrete on sand. The weight of growth can actually cause everything in your business to sink, to fall apart. Sometimes your success becomes the detriment to further and long-term and sustainable success. So this first constraint is scaling too soon. Scaling too soon and having a cracked foundation. So one of the things we look at, and we look at like real data. McKinsey, one of the largest global consulting firms, from the thousands of businesses that they work with on an annual basis, one of the things they report is that 85% of growth initiatives fail due to misalignment internally, or, and usually both, premature scaling. It costs money to scale. You have to forward invest. And if you don't know how to project what it's going to cost you to scale, you don't know how to track that, you can actually forward invest, hiring people, buying equipment, investing into marketing. This is usually smaller businesses that are under 5 million. This is where they go wrong. Investing into marketing, hiring the wrong agency, spending too much, not anticipating and planning for when the return comes. Or it goes great and you haven't planned for the operational side of things, delivering your service to your clients. And that's where everything starts to break down. Poor reviews, poor delivery, rework that costs, going back to the project and putting additional cost, losing profit. This is where success actually becomes the breaking point in a business. And so I want to ask Tim to kind of speak to that as well when it comes to the aspect specifically of uh, forward investing, anticipating and calculating the cost and the risk of buying the growth that you want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. The the biggest thing we see is AJ hit it on the mark. They attempt to enter into what we would call capitalization, or the scaling phase of their business, before they're ready to make known that they can even have a predictable operation or a positive impact in their operations at large. Again, because what is scaling? It's the exponential growth of your revenue, or really the size of your business. And before you can have revenue growth, must have infrastructure growth, or a plan for that infrastructure growth. How are you going to pay for it? That infrastructure growth is systems, it's payroll, it's leases, it's equipment, depending on your business model. And so oftentimes one of the first hurdles we see with a lot of businesses, they're like, I want to grow by 10%. But if historically they haven't grown by more than 5%, before they grow by 10%, they want to consistently grow by 5, and understand that in order to grow by 5, they have to have X amount of cash in the bank in order to afford that growth, because growth isn't linear, it isn't consistent, it is sporadic. And you must have a business model that can handle that sporadic or that volatility in order to cover the cost and cover the downside realistically. Again, if you're attempting to do 10% growth, you must accept that there is a likelihood that you are going to fail. Can you cover the cost of that failure until you find something that works? Because once you find that predictable growth plan, then you add fuel to the fire. Because every time you try to add a percentage to your growth, you must accept that that percentage of growth may not happen. Can you cover that downside? Because again, if you're growing 5% annually every single year, then you can predictably say, I'm going to grow 5%. Found something that can produce 5% returns. Great. Now you fortify that. Make sure that that's consistent as you attempt to find a strategy, which is completely new. Now I want to grow by 10%. So you continue to grow by 5% until you find something that works at 10%, and then you pay for that 10% every single year. And now you grow consistently. It's about systems and process and consistency. And from a data standpoint, oftentimes when businesses try to grow too fast, it's because they're building off of something that isn't consistent already. And so they're attempting to find, they're still in the phase of trying to find out what works, but they're trying to do that at scale. And it gets a lot more difficult, particularly in the smaller businesses, because they don't have that cash to pay for their mistakes. But back to you, AJ.
Yeah, 100%. So you guys can see there's more that goes into scaling than just pushing. It's really planning ahead. And like Tim said, it talked about systems and structure. Growing without system and structure always leads to burnout, to churn of your not only clients, but your top employees, because there's disorganization. They can see that things are not being run well, so they lose confidence in your leadership and they leave. And then it leads to low margins because you're going back and doing rework. You haven't anticipated, so it's costing you more and you're not getting a return on it. There are a lot of things, inefficiencies that come with that. So here's the action to take with this constraint. If you are pushing for growth, or you're in a stage where you are growing and you're starting to see that there's burnout, there's churn with employees, with clients, your margins are shrinking, what you need to do is identify which of the 4 phases of growth you're in. This is one of the key frameworks. The first framework we teach to every client, we implement into every business. We identify which of the 4 phases. Are you in the foundation phase, where it's really about sharpening your strategy? What are you selling? Who are you selling to? Where are they? Identifying what the opportunity is in your market. Is it the foundation stage where you're focused on strategy? Is it the fortification stage where you're now looking at your structure? How is your company built? Leadership, processes, things like that. How is your company actually structured? And then the foresight phase, where you leverage systems, you implement systems to track your data, to communicate your data across your organization so that you can forecast at least 90 days, ideally 120 days out, what you need to accomplish, what you're going to do in revenue, what it's going to cost you. Because when we look at the constraint of growing, let's just use marketing as a simple example, because in one of the Facebook groups that we have with over 20,000 HVAC owners, just in that vertical, the number one challenge is marketing, getting more leads. So if you look to invest in marketing to grow your company, and let's say you spend $5,000 in marketing, let's be conservative, you spend $5,000, you then have to look at when are leads generated and when do they close? What is your sales cycle, lead to close? What is your business cycle, lead to close to collecting on the cash? In most HVAC businesses, if you're commercial, that you're collecting the cash in at different milestones. So 30 days, 60 days, 90 days throughout the project, but it's typically you're on 30, 60, 90-day terms, 60, 90 more likely. If it's residential, you can turn that around in 2 weeks, lead to close to collect. So what are you investing in, and how long is it going to take you to collect on that? Meaning, it's June right now. If you spend $5,000 in marketing in June in order to get some big commercial jobs, you will not see the return on that money for 60, 90, 120 plus days. If it's residential, you spend $5,000 this month. Throughout the month, you'll collect on 30, 40% of it, but then you close things at the end of the month, you won't collect on that for the following month. So if you don't know how to track that, you're not going to be able to forecast and have the foresight, which is why we call it the foresight stage, to plan appropriately. And that means you never get to the fourth phase of the growth cycle, which is the fortune phase, where you're stacking cash and you now have the data to know how to invest for it to actually scale your company. So identify, where are you? Do you need to work on strategy? Do you need to work on structure? Do you need to focus on systems? And then the fortune phase is scaling. Most likely, most businesses are not there yet. They're not set up for scale. You have to build in order to scale. So here's the caveat. Even if you're in the right phase, you're operating and you're focused on the right things, if your teams don't communicate, the business won't execute. And that means you're going to have additional constraints. This constraint is around data and communication. It's having departments that operate, or rather departments, depending on how big you are, or business functions that operate in isolation. The core problem here is that your communication slows down and it creates confusion. Think of it this way. If it's like having 5 people trying to build the same house, put it in home services construction, 5 people working on the same project, build the same house, install an HVAC unit, but each of them has a different blueprint. They're all going to step on each other. There's going to be conflict unnecessarily. There's going to be friction, and there's going to be confusion. If you want to look at a really ancient story of this, you go to the Bible and the Tower of Babel. Everyone was speaking different languages. They're trying to build this huge tower. It's going great. All of a sudden, different languages, complete confusion, and it all falls apart. If your teams, your stakeholders, your department heads are not speaking the same language, they're not operating off of the same blueprint or playbook, it's going to create confusion and it's going to fall apart. And here's the statistics of it. Again, looking at this is from Salesforce, a study they did just a couple years ago in 2022, looking at the tens of thousands of businesses that they have operating, running not only sales, it's called Salesforce, but really it's sales, it's marketing, it's operations. It's a very sophisticated platform. 86% of business leaders cited a lack of collaboration as the #1 reason for failure. Teams not collaborating, leaders not collaborating. Collaboration is predicated on communication. If there's no communication, there can't be collaboration, and therefore there can't be success in whatever you're building in your business. That can be between 500 people, 50 people, or 5 business partners and owners. So your departments, if you're running on different data sets, you're going to have delays. You're going to have duplicate work. You're going to have missed opportunities. You're going to have a broken process. So alignment isn't about having more meetings. It's about having a shared language and syncing your decision making. So one of the things, we just had this conversation with a client yesterday. They are on track to do, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, they did about 8 million last year. They're on track to 8 million last year with shrinking margins. So in 2023, about 7 million. Last year, 2024, 8 million with a smaller profit margin because of inefficiencies. This year, we're helping them fine tune, dial things in, and they're on track for somewhere around 10 million if they stay consistent and they continue to implement these things. The conversation we had with them was, you need to establish your cadence of when your teams are meeting at an owner level, owners and partners, at a business function or department head level, and then individual teams. There needs to be set meetings. There needs to be a set agenda so that the right information, the right data is being discussed, and then it's being packaged together, whether it's in Word doc, whatever format, rolls up to the next level, and then that rolls up to the owners. So for you, as an owner, how often do you meet with your other owners, your co-owners, your partners? How often are you meeting with the head of your teams out in the field, your service team, your construction team? How often are you meeting with them? And do you have a set agenda to have the right conversations with them so that you're gathering the data you need in order to make decisions? Your job as a business owner is to make decisions, and decisions are based on data, and the data comes from your team. Do you have those cadences set up so that you're collecting that appropriately? Tim, Kirk, want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I'll add up here is this is often the biggest struggle that ties in with almost every other constraint that a business experiences, is how we communicate, how do we interact with the data, how do we make decisions. You can have a perfect strategy of how we execute to the market, but if you cannot correct how you communicate with the internal stakeholders, whether they be partners or staff, you won't grow and you won't understand the data or what the data is trying to tell you. And so, like, understanding how to correct the isolation in any business is oftentimes the first thing we attack. Because even with bad market strategy, with good communication internally, you can identify that and solve it rather quickly. Back to you, AJ.
Love it. So here's the critical action you need to take based on this constraint. Your teams are not communicating. You don't have the data you need to make decisions. You don't have clarity on your financials. Whatever the case is, create weekly meeting cadences across your leadership teams and have a shared scoreboard. Have so you have real-time visibility across the functions. What are the KPIs? What are the numbers? What numbers is sales hitting compared against what they should be hitting? What do your financial numbers look like? Revenue, contracts, what's your total contract value, what was collected? All of these numbers, look at your teams, determine what those are, put them in a spreadsheet, and then start meeting on a weekly basis to discuss that. Have very focused, targeted meetings. Internally, we have a morning huddle every morning for 10 or 15 minutes. And it's real simple. Every person on the team, what's the win from yesterday? What did we get done? And then what's the priority today? Then we have a weekly leadership team meeting with our functional department heads, director of marketing, head of the controller, all the functions. Report on the numbers, what's happening in the week, what are priorities. We go in more in depth. Once a month, we have a partner meeting, which is big picture, where we at as a company, what's the financial outlook from the past month. We had this yesterday, and so Tim and I report. He reports to me. Here's the numbers. Here's cash. Here's how profitable we were. Here's projections for the next month, next 90 days. Here's where we're at strategically, and then I report that to the team, and we talk through the strategy. There's a regular cadence, and the agenda is always the same to make sure we're discussing the most important things that need to be discussed. So that's constraint number 2. Now, communication is essential. However, if you're hiring the wrong people, regardless of communication, nothing's going to work. So let's talk through talent, and Kirk's going to jump in and really weigh in on this one. I'm just going to preface and then let him do his magic because Kirk's the guy. Now, if you think of HR, typically HR we think of as either the annoying hall monitor that's just there to, what are you doing? Or what are you doing wrong so I can tell on you? Or we think of it as the Toby Flenderson, if you're a fan of The Office, just super annoying person. So the core problem here is having low standards, high turnover, which leads to wasted payroll. So here, I'll give you an analogy. Think of it this way. It's like trying to win a race with a flat tire. The vehicle's moving, but you're dragging dead weight. That dead weight is team members who are not producing, either because they are misaligned, they're not a good fit, they're in the wrong seat, or they're just a negative employee. Whatever the case is, they lack skill. It was a bad hire. And I'll say this, not every person you think is a bad hire is a bad hire. Sometimes they're in the wrong seat. Sometimes you need to show up and provide better leadership and coaching. So I'll kick it over to Kirk, give some insights on things to look for when you're hiring. And here's why it's so important. A bad hire, on average, costs 30% of their salary. So if you hire someone for $100,000 and they turn out to be a bad hire, typically it's about 90 days before you really see it and you have enough evidence that they're not doing their job, they can't do their job. And so you've spent 30 grand for a bad hire. Now you got to go hire again. So let's kick it over to Kirk to give us some insights to help you avoid that. And how do you hire rock stars? And again, Kirk, the strategies he uses, he's built hundreds of, it's hundreds of companies, maybe in the thousands, but hundreds and thousands of employees. So I'll let him drop those insights.
Yeah, so I think it's starting from the foundation. Understanding who you are. You can't identify who you want to work in your organization if you don't know who you are and who your organization is. So starting out with mission, why? Why is it important that the organization exists? Why is it important that the organization is successful? Vision, setting that vision for not only your brand or your legacy, your people, but also your revenue. So, what are those 10-year targets that you're going to shoot for? I can tell you that it's really difficult, nearly impossible to hire high performers if they don't see their success as an available opportunity inside of your business. Meaning, if your goal is to be a $500,000 business at 50% profitability so you can make a good living and it's a lifestyle business, you're not going to attract top performers. That same business that the target is $5 to $10 million and it allows for 20 to 25 people to be madly successful, you will be able to attract that, but not without casting the vision for them to see their success inside of your success. And then core values. How are we going to do this? So think of core values as the behaviors necessary to be successful in your business. So for yourself, and this started with my very first company. It was me for about 9 months, and I had mission, vision, and core values because I ran each person that I was going to bring into my business, whether that was a vendor or a provider partner. They all went through the same filters. But core values is really those 5 to 8 behaviors necessary to be successful. If you have people that you bring into your business, it allows you to transparently identify whether or not they are aligned or misaligned with your company, with your organization. So that's step one. Step two is really to have a clear path to your hiring practice. So a lot of times we are working with companies that are hiring their first or maybe their 10th team member. Not a great deal of experience from hiring in the sense that nobody trained you, nobody taught you how to do it. You got a title of either supervisor, hiring manager, or owner, and all of a sudden you're the one that's supposed to be hiring and knowing how to interview. First step to interviewing is having a list of open-ended questions, ideally scenario-based questions, so you can put those individuals through scenarios that are aligned with that role before you put them in the role. Let them tell you their competency for the role. Most of the time when I'm doing interview training with our clients, the first really first interview, first couple of role plays that we go through, we realize very quickly that we are asking statements in the form of a question and then asking for agreement. For example, sales is really easy to pick on, but you have a sales manager that's your top performer sales guy. He just got transitioned to be a manager because that's the next step, right? He's going into that interview asking, here at ABC Plumbing, we make 100 dials a day and set 2 appointments and close 1 deal every week. Does that seem like something that you could do with your current skill set? Candidate says, absolutely. I would 100% be able to do that. And we walk away from that feeling like they are a great candidate. As opposed to, here at ABC Plumbing, we make 100 phone calls, set 2 appointments, close 1 deal a week. In your current skill set, how do you leverage those skills to meet those metrics? We're asking them to display competency through the question, not giving them the answer and then asking for them to agree with the answer. So having your questions buttoned up with scenarios that are aligned with that role. And again, those scenarios come out of the objectives that are in your job description. So you should have 8 to 10 objectives that that role is going to deliver to your organization before getting started. Hopefully that fills in a lot of the blanks that go into that first or 50th hire. If you experience higher than industry normal turnover, there's a good chance that addressing things at the top of that candidate funnel, we can shore up anywhere from 10 to 20% of your turnover in a fairly quick time frame.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Kirk. So you guys can see there are specific steps. It's not just how you feel about it. You got to have a specific step, specific process in place to do this right. Otherwise, it is costing you a lot of money, not only in terms of what you're paying for bad hires, but what you're losing in productivity, production, revenue, depending on what their role is. So here's what you need to take, in addition to what Kirk said, is implement that system, track it, scoreboard, look at your A players, and reach out for help. Because once you have a solid team, you can do so much more. You can leverage that and that's a whole other discussion of how to leverage the team. But you can have great people, and that's another constraint that you can eliminate. Have great people, but if your sales system has leaks, if your marketing system has leaks, or you don't have any marketing, then this is going to undermine the good things that you're doing. So I hope you notice every time you fix one constraint, you've got to look at the other ones. And that's why we look at the 8 primary constraints that are in every single business. How do you fix all of those? And it's really a game of prioritizing. Which one do you need to focus on? Which is causing the greatest problem? Where's the bleeding? Where do we need to put pressure? So this next constraint, the fourth one, is related to your marketing sales. You're chasing more leads instead of fixing the leaks. Now, this depends on how you are set up. So let's talk 2 scenarios. Most businesses that are almost all that are under $1 million aren't running any ads. They're not spending any money on marketing, or maybe very little, inconsistently. In that scenario, you need to go chase leads. You need to go network, go to BNI Group, find one that's got other types of business owners who serve your same customer, which is why the home services space is great, because you can connect with the plumber and you're not competition. Electricians, realtors, even property management companies. We have a client that's going to a big property management conference in California, I think next month. And the whole goal is find these property managers who have all of these properties and that need plumbing and HVAC. So that's where you got to go. But let's say that you're past $1 million. You're somewhere between 3 and 5, usually around there. You're starting to establish a budget and you're thinking, all right, I've done as much as I can networking, and getting referrals, which are great. What do I do now? I need to spend money on marketing. Well, do I go to the SEO route? Do I go and do an AI bot? AI is huge right now in home services. 99% of the time you don't need it. So don't go spend money on that first. I'll walk you through kind of what this cadence should look like. And to put into context, we've done this many times. Took a client who was losing profit every month, tens of thousands of dollars in lost profit every month, in a $2 million business, on track for about two and a half. Implemented marketing the right way, in the right sequence, right strategy, and there is a sequence to it. In home services, it's not 90% of the time it's the same sequence. Within 90 days, they went from having 50,000 in cash to having generating an additional just under 600,000 in new cash, and then as of last month, hit a benchmark. Went from 250,000 the month that we started working with them to doing over 800,000. Now that's a lot of opportunity. There were some commercial jobs in there, but on the residential side, we implemented marketing, and marketing is consistently producing leads that are consistently generating tens of thousands of dollars every month. And now we're pushing and we're scaling that. So here's the sequence and what it looks like. If you are between 3 and 5 million, I'm just going to give it to you, and you're in home services, it's either starting with Facebook ads or starting with Google search ads and Google LSA, local service ads. Those are guaranteed calls. Start with Facebook, start with Google. Do not start with SEO. SEO takes 6 to 9 months to optimize, 6 to 9 months to really produce anything. If anyone tells you you should start with local SEO, they are trying to sell you their service. Even if they're good at it, it is not where you should start. You need to start with leads that are going to generate phone calls. Get your phones ringing. That's going to be your Google local service ads. You pay for the lead. If it's a good call, if it's not, you submit to Google that it was not a good lead. The call is recorded, and then you don't pay for it. Google LSA, then Google search ads, then add on Facebook. If you are in something that is more of an emergency, plumbing, then starting with Google is the right move. If you're in something that is not based on an emergency, I mean that your customer doesn't call just when they have an emergency, then start with Facebook. So you can have more control. You can go directly to them, especially if you do flooring, renovations, remodels, something where they aren't looking for it necessarily until they've found some reason to do it. Mother-in-law is moving in, family's coming over for the holidays. They just want to change the garage. Often people, they don't even think about it until they see your ad and realize, oh, you know what? I would really like to do that renovation. My AC unit isn't working, and they're online looking and they see a Facebook ad. So Facebook or Google, one of the two. Here's some hard data for you, and this is coming from big marketing data firms. 79% of marketing leads never convert because of poor follow-up. So we talk about 4 levers in marketing sales. There's more leads, there is better leads, there's converting more of the leads that you are getting already, and then there's increasing the average conversion value and lifetime value. So that's a whole discussion training in and of itself that we teach, but I want to give you those 4 levers. Ask yourself, do you need more leads? If you're not running paid marketing, you're at 1 or 2 million and it's all referrals, you need more leads. Do you need better leads? If you're spending money on marketing and you're converting the leads but you're not converting them to a high enough value, you need better leads. If you're getting lots of leads and they're quality, but you're still not generating enough revenue and profit, you need to increase how many of those leads you're converting. That means follow-up. 80% of the loss of leads are not converted because there's no follow-up. There's 2-3% that will convert right away. The rest you follow up and they'll convert in 3-4 weeks. We looked at the numbers with one of our clients recently and found that leads generated in a month converted within 1 to 2 weeks. But the bigger jobs that were several thousand to $10,000, $15,000, those took 30 days plus to 60, 90 days to convert. But there had to be follow-up. So most leads won't help you if your conversion is too low, if your deal size is too small, your average ticket, your average job, or if your lifetime value is broken. Repeat customers. Some of your businesses, repeat customer means 2 or 3 times in the course of a year. That means emails. That means you're following up. That means you're reaching out. You're remarketing. A whole other strategic discussion. But I want to give you these things so you understand what to look at and what questions to ask. The top 1% of businesses that break 10 million, go to 20, go to 30, they do that through leverage, not volume. Meaning, if you take a business that's optimized, has marketing systems, sales systems in place for conversion, optimization, for follow-up, give them 1,000 leads in the course of a year, that company will convert at a much higher rate and generate much more revenue and profit from that same amount of leads versus a company that doesn't have the follow-up, doesn't have the processes and systems in place, and they're complaining that they need more leads. If your sales team says we need more leads, the first thing I always do is I look at how many are you converting from what you're getting. And there's certain KPIs and industry benchmarks. So here's what you do. Audit your sales process. Fix your conversion. If your sales team, if you know in your industry what your conversion should be. It varies, but we have clients that when they get an incoming call, they're converting at 80, 90%. So if your dispatch is not converting 50, 60%, you've got a problem. If they are, and they're just killing it, then you just need to feed them more leads, feed them more, and you'll increase the revenue and the profit. Retention. Are customers coming back? Are they referring? Are they leaving you Google reviews? Fulfillment. Make sure these things are dialed in before you spend more money. I could sit with a business for an hour and show them how to increase their revenue and profit without spending a dime more, just by improving the marketing and sales process. So that's constraint number 4. Is your marketing and sales is not performing at the level it needs to, so you're chasing more leads instead of fixing the leaks in your lead conversion. So I'm going to kick it over to Tim now for the constraint number 5, because this is usually the first one that we look at to really understand where the business is at, and it has to do with getting your financial visibility. We use the analogy of flying a plane. If you fly a plane, you got to have your instruments, your dashboard, because when a plane is flying, it's typically the pilots are typically flying blind. They're flying at night, they're flying over the ocean, they're flying in the clouds. So they rely on their instruments to give them the data to tell them where they're at and if they're heading in the right direction. So I'll kick it over to Tim, talk through this fifth constraint.
So the fifth constraint is they scale on emotion. And what we mean by that is they rely on hope and not math to save them from their decisions or to make the decisions for them. So to really, this constraint attacks the core issue of cash flow. Just because your revenue is up does not mean that your cash flow is following in conjunction with your revenue. Oftentimes, what we'll see is you are giving away margin in order to close projects, or your sales team is discounting services that you don't account for, or it's taking you longer to deliver on projects, or you're looking at your business from I think I'm going to do $100,000 a month. But when you actually look down to your cash flow, that $100,000, the cash flow that the revenue should be generating isn't there, or it takes you longer to collect on it. So when you're attempting to scale or run a profitable business, cash flow is king. You can have a really large business that collapses, and we see that all the time when we follow public companies. They go under because of cash flow. And as you get larger, you become more important to the economy. And so they give out debt from the government in order to fund those businesses. But the smaller enterprises, the $10 million, $5 million businesses, your access to capital is determined by your cash flow. How well can you tell the story that my business can generate cash and I am a good steward of this asset? So when you're scaling on emotion and not necessarily the math of business, you have these problems that you just have to hope will solve themselves, rather than saying, because of this problem that I know exists because of the data and the math that I can do based off my business model, I know that if I do X, Y, and Z, I should expect these three results. One of these three things is going to happen. And based off of one of these three things, I can walk through another decision tree and identify what I need to do because X, Y, and Z happened again. And so it's identifying a strategy that you can now predict future results based off current decisions. And now you can have better decision making in your business. BJ, I hope that answers the questions, really stepping back from the emotional state of an operator and jumping into the math and understanding the model that your business creates. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to know your numbers as a business owner, really an operator. You got to know what your numbers are. 82% of small businesses fail because of cash flow issues. That's coming from U.S. Bank. They do a lot of business with, or have a lot of customers that are businesses, and many, in a lot of cases, $3 to $10 million companies. They don't track job costing. They don't track margin. They don't track break even. One of our clients, they were told by some bad consulting, hired the wrong firm, that their break even every month was $250,000. Tim went into the financials, did an audit, and immediately found that it's actually 290. So they were short by on their target by $40,000 every single month because they were given bad advice. So it's important to know your numbers and have the right people looking at it, which is tough. And that's why we do these calls, to give you the right direction. There's no cost for this call. You get more value on these calls, and we've done I don't know, dozens of these calls now. If you were to go watch all of those, you'll get more value than most $5,000-$10,000 coaching programs, because we're trying to impact business owners. We got a goal this year: impact and help 10,000 just this year. So this is how we do it. So hopefully you're getting value from this. Drop a comment if you're getting value from this, and if you have a question, and we can address that question. If you're in one of the Facebook groups that we're broadcasting this to, drop a question, and so we can jump in there and give you those answers. So here's your action. You need to have visibility in your finances. You need to get a weekly report. You need to look at it monthly. If you don't know how, start reaching out. If you're in some Facebook groups, ask who are other companies using. Reach out to us. Drop a comment on this video. Who should I use? Where can I go? How can I do this? And we'll help point you in the right direction. So now let's talk about trust, because the way that most companies are, so many companies are addicted to just running ads instead of building loyalty. They're always chasing the new customer And there's this principle in just looking at approaching a market and generating revenue, acquiring customers. It's called the I just lost it. The law of diffusion of innovation. Google it. Simon Sinek does a great talk on it. But the principle is this: 2.5% of any given market, so the market you're trying to reach, your local market of customers, of homeowners who are looking for your home services, 2.5% of them are ready to do business with you immediately because they are actively looking. They know what their problem is, they know the solution, and they're just looking for the right company to give them the right price. They'll do it. Another 13.5% will do business in 30 to 90 days. They're searching. It's not an immediate problem right now. Their HVAC unit isn't going down now, but it's having some problems, and they're gonna do their research and then they're gonna hire someone. The majority of every market is they're called the early early majority and the late majority. They represent 68% of every market on average. Those are the people who take the longest. They'll take 3, 6, 12 plus months to convert, but they become lifetime loyal customers. These are your Apple users who only use Apple. These are the weirdos who only use Android. Some of you guys, I'm not judging, but I am. Then you have people who are loyal to Chevy, loyal to Ford, they're brand loyal. As you build your business, initially you go after those people who are ready to convert right away. You need revenue. You're under $1 million. You're just starting out. You haven't broken $1 million. Go for those people. Get the sales, and you should always be pursuing those people. That's your direct response marketing. That's what Facebook is. That's partially what Google is. Target those people, and then when you get them as a customer, then cultivate, add value. Weekly email, newsletter, special offers. We're running a promotion right now for one of our clients to their list of 11,000 contacts. Over the years that they've been in business, they've got 11,000 contacts, and of that, about 9,000 have actually done business with them. So we're sending a promotion via email, via text message, and we're running a Facebook ad campaign to that exact list, plus a cold audience that's never done business with them. And we're remarketing to the same people to get them back, because if they've done business with you, there's some trust there. And this particular client, they've got 1,400 5-star Google reviews. So we know they do good work. We know their customers are happy. We just need to market to them again, because they're going to have the issue, and your customers will forget you. They'll forget who you are. So make sure that you are serving your customers, taking care of them, keeping in communication, because this is where the strategy of brand awareness and long-term thinking comes in. Stay in contact with your customers, because if you replace a unit on their home, you're an HVAC, well, they're not going to need your services again for a few years, but their neighbor may need services. And if they've been getting your newsletter, they've been following you on social media, their neighbor says, hey, who did you get your unit replaced by? You now have a referral. If they move to another home, or they buy a second home, or they have another unit that needs to be replaced, or another home, you now are top of mind. So it's creating that brand awareness, and it's about cultivating the relationship. If you focus on revenue, that'll get you to 2, 3 million. If you want to scale to 10 and 20 and 30, it's about relationship. You got to have the long-term relationship, especially if you are if you're working in commercial, because you burn a relationship, you don't get referrals. If you build a good relationship, you're the go-to person. You're the one that they're referring. So here's some hard data for you from Nielsen. These are the people who are watching what you watch on TV, what you consume content, and they're reporting all that data, customer behavior, consumer behavior. A referred client is 4 times more likely to convert, and they're 37% more loyal than if you just got them through an ad. The same is, or not the exact same, but it's similar with a repeat customer. If they've done business with you twice, they're more loyal. 3 times, they're very loyal. 4 times, and they're referring you, you can build that loyalty really deep very quickly if you do it the right way and you focus on the relationship. Only 11% of companies have a structured referral system. And this isn't just set up your CRM and send a text message out. That's good, but then have your texts on site. This is what our client that I mentioned has 1,400 5-star Google reviews, and they have 1,400. They might have a handful that are negative, and then they go back out to that customer, they make it right, they pursue them to fix the relationship because they have integrity in their work. Their techs on site ask for a review. And we've just now we are in the process of implementing a new software and system and process where when their techs are on site, they take photos, they upload it, and now that'll go into Google as well every time they do a job, and it's pinpointed on a map on their website. So future customers and return customers can see the work that they do. You've got to have a really good system, and it's not just about the review, it's about the process, not just about the revenue, or sorry, it's not just about the review, it's about the relationship. It's not just about the revenue, it's about the relationship. Ads generate transactions, but relationship builds brand trust, and brand trust creates loyalty, and loyalty creates long-term growth. This is why Apple, their greatest marketing asset and sales asset is their customers who say, hey, you should switch to Apple. Why are you on Android? And the back and forth, it generates billions of dollars for them. So here's the action you need to take. Create a post-sale process system that turns your customers into advocates by gathering testimonials, referrals, reviews, and reactivations. Hey, how would you rate your service today? Oh, it's 5-star. This is great. Awesome. We appreciate that so much. Could you do us a favor? Could you leave a Google review so other people can hear your experience? And we want to help more people and provide great service. Oh, by the way, I see your neighbors here. Their unit looks like it could use some work. Their unit needs to be replaced. Would you be willing to give a referral and then just ask for it? Often you're not getting it because you're just not asking for it. So create that customer loyalty. That constraint is simply you're relying too much on ads and you're not building brand loyalty, building real deep customer relationships. Because when your customers love you, you have a real asset. Now, if they love you, you also need to make sure that your team is pulling their weight and not scaling, and you're not scaling waste. So let's dive in there and talk about the contribution of your team members. And I'll tap in Kirk here to add insight where he sees it, because a lot of times this comes down to not only on the sales side, but this is how you manage your people, how you build your people so they build your business. I don't build Ultra Partners. I built the team that built Ultra Partners. Myself, Kirk, Tim, Heather, us as partners, we have to build the team that builds the business, and we provide leadership, vision, coaching. That's our role. That's the same for you as an owner. That's your role. The core problem here is a couple of things. It's having inflated payroll. We often go into business and Kirk will do an audit or Tim will do an audit, look at the finances and realize there's a lot of payroll going out versus what that payroll is producing. It looks a little high. Kirk will look at the org chart and the resource plan, if there is one, which there's usually not, and then he'll build one. There are too many employees for the amount of revenue. We start looking for those inefficiencies. Most business owners don't know what to look for. What's the indicator? What's the red flag that I have too many employees or that I have inflated payroll costs? How do I even evaluate that? So I'll give you a quick analogy. It's like having 11 players on the field, but only 4 actually trying to win the game. On a basketball team, you have 5 players, but that game can be won by a single phenomenal player. And typically you've got 2 players on the team. You think the 1990s Chicago Bulls, it was Jordan and Pippen. They ran it. Later in 2000s, it was Shaq and Kobe. The 2 of them could win the game themselves. You don't want your team to function that way. You want to have 5 really solid players who are working as a unit to build your business. So I want to kick it over to Kirk to talk through kind of what he looks at inside of the business. What are some of the red flags, Kirk, to understand I've got too many employees, they're not producing the way they need to, I might need to transition people, make some decisions, and have some hard conversations?
Yeah. The first place you look is revenue per employee. It's a great place to start, and the hard answer to that is depending on your industry and your profitability, it's going to look different depending on where you sit. I would say a less um, ambiguous answer to that is looking at the alignment of your team to their role and to the organization. So, as we build out human capital strategies, we're looking to stack rank the team. A lot of times when we go into a business, and to your point, Tim, we'll go through the finances, do an audit, understand that we have low profitability because we have high human capital expenses that aren't justified by the current level of production in the business. Once we get that, we build the roster. And to your point, we build that roster for productivity, for alignment with the organization. So we start with how effective are your team members in their current role as it sits right now. And then second, we look at how aligned is that team member to the overall mission of the organization. So think of this as somebody that is willing to almost row blindly in that boat. If you were in kind of that fight or flight mode of your business. And then lastly, we would stack rank them on just their core values alignment. How aligned are they with your core values, those behaviors that we need to see displayed? For instance, we may have somebody that is an absolute rock star in productivity. Sales is easy target again because they wear their performance on their sleeve. So they are closing more deals, they've got more revenue coming in, but maybe they rank lower in alignment with core values because they're not accountable, they're not disciplined, they're not emboldened for others and of themselves in their role. So they would take a step back when it comes to that core values alignment. So we would look at those three pillars, stack rank them, and then look at their overall average score. At that point, we understand that if we can't right the ship in the sense of productivity and the current overhead cost of our payroll, then we work from the bottom up in each one of those departments. And it becomes a very objective conversation at that point. It's not based on the way that we feel about this person. It's really based on alignment with the overall organization and their role. So we want to make it as much data driven as we possibly can when it comes to the revenue generation of the overall organization per our head count. And the way that we register headcount is full-time equivalent, or FTE. And then we go through those stack ranking processes to really remove or bake out as much of the feeling or emotion that we can before we start to make those decisions in the organization.
Love it. Appreciate it, Kirk. So to kind of sum up, I mean, there's just a few things that you can look at. And again, Kirk's done this for countless organizations representing thousands of employees. You got to audit every role. What are they contributing? How many employees do you have for the revenue that you have? What's their production? Don't confuse busyness with value. A really busy employee isn't necessarily an employee who's adding value. Great companies are built on performance accountability. So, and think of it this way: this is how we really look at it. If that employee is in an organization, we've let employees go. If they're in your organization and they're not thriving, they're not performing at their best, they're not getting the full benefit of being a part of the team, you have an obligation or responsibility to release them to go pursue opportunities elsewhere, because they're not being served and you're not being served. That's not a good relationship. And if you're keeping them because you feel bad, a psychologist would call that codependence, and that would be cause for therapy. Don't go to therapy with your employees. Let them go. Let them pursue other opportunities and go thrive somewhere else. So the last constraint that we'll talk through, this is, I would say, the most important, because it's about you as the owner, operator, as the CEO. The biggest constraint, and we saved it for last, is you operating still as an owner and not graduating and learning to operate like an 8-figure, 9-figure CEO. It's very different. If you're still out in the truck, you're out in the field, you're doing the jobs, you are an employee in your business. Your goal is to build a business and build a team that does not require you to do that. And the hardest part is most business owners don't know how. You're great at the thing you sell, doing HVAC, doing plumbing, doing roofing. You're not necessarily good at building a business, the infrastructure. You can get to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, sometimes even 5, depending on if you're doing like commercial work, and still be an employee in your business. You cannot get to 10 million sustainably. You cannot get to 20. You cannot get to 30 or 40. And we've helped businesses scale to that level. And what changes is we tell the owners, you have to remove yourself. You can't go in the field anymore. You have to lead. You have to create vision. You have to plan, and you have to strategize. You can't be out there in a truck all the time, because then you're not running your business. You're not working on it. You don't get to race or fly the plane. You have to build the plane. And then you got to teach someone else to build it. And then you have to create strategy and all of that. So it'd be like you trying to play quarterback, coach, and referee all at the same time. That's really what building a small business is at the start. You're the quarterback, you're running the plays, you're also the coach, you're also the referee, you're throwing flags. You've got to get yourself to where you're just the coach. And then you can replace yourself, and now you're the company owner. And you're creating vision. Where are we going next? How are we expanding this thing? It's not sustainable to do all at the same time. And part of our mission, really our value system, we're all family. We all have families. My wife, Heather, she is one of our partners, and she works in the business. Kirk has a family, and he's got 27 kids. Tim's got a family as well, and he's got a bunch of dogs. And we all have families. So our value system is, how do you grow and scale a business without sacrificing first your family, then your health, then your sanity? You lose those three things, you've built it all for nothing. What good is it to gain the whole world and that you lose your soul in the process? It doesn't make any sense. So there's a way to do it right where you don't lose those things. Founders who don't delegate, they're 30% more likely to stall, get stuck. And in reality, businesses don't stall. They slow down, which we call stall, and they're really beginning the process of decline. And if you stay in that stalled position, think of it like a plane. You're flying up in the air. If you stall, you're dead, unless you drastically change something, and now you're in an emergency situation. So if your business is on track for the same revenue in 2025 that you did in 2024, you're in a stall, and you're in a dangerous place, and you need to start making some decisions to move forward. So you can't scale a business that depends on you for everything. The top 1%, they build leadership teams that function within an operating system as the visionary, not the bottleneck. And so want to say this, you need to ask yourself in your business, do you have a proper operating system?